with Joe Burrow now moving into 7-4, tied with the Baltimore Ravens, even though the Ravens have the advantage because of their previous matchup that they had a few weeks ago. How do you feel about the Bengals turning their season around to be able to compete in the AFC?
Well, I think it was about time. Obviously, they had a pretty poor start at the beginning of the year. A lot of it was predicated on the fact that the offensive line couldn't protect Joe Burrow in any way, shape, or form. And yet, despite that, and not only that, they lost Jamar Chase a couple of weeks ago due to a hip injury. They've been able to really come back full circle and start at a 7-4 record basically when we go into December, which I think at this point is basically kind of a record that we kind of expected them to be at this point. So you got to give a lot of credit to Joe Burrow and just the overall team being able to weather the storm at the beginning of the year and get these really crucial wins to put them in this position. Now, when I look at the Bengals right now, 7-4, they're tied with the Ravens. The Ravens own the tiebreaker simply just off of the one matchup that they've had. It's going to put a lot of emphasis on that next matchup that's going to take place between the Bengals and the Ravens because I think whoever wins that game, it's going to dictate who probably wins the division as a whole, unless the team that wins that game just absolutely falls apart at the end of the year. But I like the fact that the Bengals won this game not off the back of Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow did enough to win them this game, but this was a defensive win for them. The fact that they were able to maintain Derrick Henry to a pedestrian day at running the football was pivotal. I was in the mindset if they held him to 75 yards rushing or even 100 yards rushing, that they would take that as a win simply just based off of what Derrick Henry can do when he gets 25, 30 touches. The fact that he was only held to 35 yards rushing or under 40 yards, that's something that you could walk away from. That's a huge benefit for them. And I think going into this game, one of the things I had mentioned, if you get into a situation where you have Joe Burrow going up against Ryan Tannehill, who do you think is going to make the play that needs to be made to win the game? I think Joe Burrow was that guy over Ryan Tannehill. And that's kind of what happened in this game. Joe Burrow made the plays that needed to be made. Ryan Tannehill made some plays here and there, but just not enough to get over the hump against Cincinnati. And as far as I see it, Cincinnati needed this win just to keep at pace with the Ravens. And as we go into the month of December, I think the Bengals are in a real good spot here. Jamar Chase was questionable coming into this game. The Bengals decided to sideline him for another week to just kind of rest up and get ready for this upcoming Chiefs game, which is absolutely critical for them. And they're going to need to be at full strength going into that game. So, if they're able to bring back Jamar Chase into the fold to round out that offensive unit, those guys are going to be ready to go against the best team in the NFL at this point in the Kansas City Chiefs. So when it comes to the Bengals look like they have their pieces ready to go going into the month of December, and that's absolutely crucial as far as I see it. It puts them in the driver's seat of their own destiny, and when it comes to that upcoming Ravens matchup to really dictate the division, they got to be on their A game because if they win that game against the Ravens, I think that they could walk away being AFC North Division champs when it's all said and done. But this was an absolutely crucial road win for them. The Titans are no team to slack on here. The Titans have been one of the better teams defensively this year, simply just because when you've looked at the Titans defensively, the last time they gave up 20 points was against the Las Vegas Raiders, and that was back in September. So it's been a long time since the Titans have given up 20 points to a defense. And against an offense. So overall, the Bengals were able to do enough. They got this win in Nashville, and we'll see whether or not they could be able to maintain this winning success moving forward. But the biggest thing to me is they're getting Jamar Chase back in the fold potentially next week, and I think that's going to be absolutely huge because that chemistry that Joe Burrow and Jamar have, it's one of the best quarterback wide receiver duos that we'll see in the NFL. And if they have those guys ready to go against Kansas City, that's going to be a hell of a matchup when it takes place next week. So, as far as I see it, the Bengals are definitely in control of their own destiny, but they got to take advantage of these next couple of games that they have on their slate if they're going to try to win the AFC North. So, Kev, the floor is yours.
Man, it's like I said, when my boy Joseph gets it going, He's an unstoppable force, man. People sleep on the guy after a Super Bowl appearance last year. Obviously, they start off slow and they find a way to get it together as they start to get healthy. Obviously, Jamar Chase gets injured, but they have been able to weather the storm since he's been hurt. You go on a 3-game win streak against the Panthers, Steelers, and Titans. 2 of those games were against poor opponents in terms of records, so that was expected. But then you go and you play an AFC potential juggernaut in terms of leading the AFC South, someone you faced in the playoffs last year, someone you're familiar with, and their one-trick pony, which is Derrick Henry. You not only cap, or should I say bottle up Derrick Henry, you basically make him null and void in terms of what he was able to do on the ground. 38 yards rushing is absolutely incredible for an opposing defense to stand there and say, we kept that guy, that animal, under 50 yards. And the only team that was able to do that was Buffalo in week 2 of the season. So the Bengals need to hold their heads up high to say that we may not have scored a lot, we may not have capitalized on some points left on the board, but we were able to keep their best asset, their best weapon, their best player under a minuscule of yards in terms of totality on the ground. Now, he did have 70 some odd yards in the air based on 169-yard pass, but in terms of overall, I'll allow that one pass as opposed to him going off for 200 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. So let them have what they had, but Ryan Tannehill did perform well, 291 yards. So it's not like they went out there and kind of choked. It was just a matter of who was going to be able to want it more, who was going to be able to push more. And even without Joe Mixon, the Bengals were able to run for over 100 yards as a team. So T. Higgins did what he needed to do. Hayden Hurst did what he needed to do. And, you know, the Titans go back to the drawing board and say, well, you know what? We got to play better. We can't just rely on Derrick Henry. But we all know that that's what Mike Vrabel does. It's literally lean on Derrick Henry, 25 to 30 attempts a game. And that's going to be the play action for Ryan Tannehill, whether that's with Austin Hooper, Treylon Burks, and so on and so forth. They have okay weapons. I would say that they're a little bit underwhelming, at least in my personal opinion, because one of them is a rookie. So I will say that outside of Derrick Henry, they do lack depth. So the Titans go back and they say, you know what? This was a close one. We can improve. We can get better. They're going to win the South. I don't see anybody coming out of the AFC South, especially with our division being absolute dog shit. And then you look at the Bengals. They're already the best. Excuse me. They are already tied with the Ravens for the division. And when that game comes to pass, that is going to be an absolute must-watch television event. And once again, Kyle, this freaking game next week is a 4:25 game. It's not a Sunday night game. It's not a Monday night game. It is a midday Sunday game. And Kyle, man, we keep talking about this all year. If you're gonna flex certain games, you got to look at the and circle like, yo, this game is gonna be lit. But here we are, and it's gonna be a 4:25 game. But yeah, kudos to the Bengals, man. I knew they'd find a way to turn around. I knew they'd get it together. I mean, Burrow was sacked one time. That's a lot less than average over the last couple of years. So I will say that they've gotten better and they've gotten it together. But yeah, the Bengals and Chiefs game next week, it's going to be a good one.